and we're so excited to have Melanie and Jerome Klomp from Soil Heroes. And it's so wonderful to have you, because we actually just were speaking earlier about how incredible our journeys have been, so similar, with me and Mike being the farmer and me working 24/7 on our charity Carbon8. And Melanie and Jerome are exactly the same. Hello and welcome to Regener8. Thank you so much for coming. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having us. It's already a great pleasure. As an introduction, I'm the fourth generation farmer. I'm responsible together with Melanie for the running of the family farm, which is in full transition at the moment to become a source of inspiration for regenerative agriculture. And we have the first plots also, which we are managing on a Regener8 organic base for soy sauce purposes. And besides that, we strongly believe in soil improvement, soil quality, and during the journey of improving your soil, you are able to deliver also beautiful things, which is called natural capital at the moment, or ecosystem services. And we are quite busy with building business models around ecosystem services at the moment to help the farmers with extra income streams based on soil improvement. That's in a nutshell what we do. So it's farming, and it is soil improvement and ecosystem services.
So yeah. Jerome, that's just so much like what Mike's a fourth generation farmer, and we live on 3,000 acres, and we call our place heaven on earth.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the thing that your discussion around ecosystem services and all the work that you're doing in your charity, do you have any time to work on the charity, or is it a bit like Mike trying to working 24 hours a day, maybe 15 hours on the farm and a couple of hours back in the charity? You're just trying to blend it a bit.
We are at the moment fortunate that we have a good team on the farm, and we have a good team within Soil Heroes at the moment. So it's getting a little bit more under control at the moment. Sometimes people say when you have everything under control, you're not going fast enough. But it's still going fast if you look back in what's happened in the last 2 years in the Regener8 world. But we are super grateful that we have a super team around us, which is helping us at the moment at the farm and within Soil Heroes. So it's a little bit more under control at the moment. So we are also happy that we can go on holiday within 1.5 or 2 weeks.
Yeah, and coming back on the charity, that's mainly my task. So we are, if you're talking about, you could say we have like running 3 companies, like this the farm, and for Soil Heroes purposes, our farm is also the experience farm, on which we do a lot of projects on Regener8 based. And the projects are running by the foundation. So when you have the Soil Heroes family, that's divided into identities, you could say, the Soil Heroes operations, which is building business models around regenerative agriculture. And then we have a non-profit area, and that's the identity of the Soil Heroes Foundation. That's mainly my task. And that is because when we, you could say, discovered the systemic change, which now is called regenerative agriculture. At the time, it was about 7 years ago, regenerative agriculture was not known at all here in the Netherlands. And when we discovered that word, you could say, that then you have a word you can Google, and then the world goes open. And what we immediately saw that in, you could say, especially dry areas like or where they suffer more from climate change, like South Africa, the middle of America, and also Australia, are, yeah, you could say, ahead of us in developing Regener8. So in that journey, we really reached out to a lot of people who already had a lot of experience and see what we could learn from them. And that's also how we met Charles Massey, and yeah, we get acquaintance to each other, and he introduced us further into Regener8. So it is mainly on the charity base. That's my task, and that's often about gathering a lot of knowledge about Regener8, spreading that knowledge, be a haven for farmers, be an example for farmers with our own farm, and also about, you could say, providing especially farmers with evidence that this systemic change is doable, because in the Netherlands they are used to do farming on a very intensive way. If you look at the yields per hectare, because we are talking about hectares and not acres. So hectares, I think 1 hectare is divided in 2.5, and then you have the amount of acres. Multiply. And the system is so efficient and so economically, you could say, on a high ratio level, that changing that is very scary, and also takes a lot of economic risks for farmers to do that. And by providing them with the proof of practice through our experience farm, and to show them really how we do it on the management level, on the farm management level, we hope we can convince we can be you could say a basis for farmers which really wants to go into transition.
When you talk about discovering regenerative practice, was there a journey for you? Was it something that you were always regenerative, always looking after the farm, or were you conventional farmers that suddenly discovered that what you were doing was actually hurting the farm?
It's quite a beautiful story, because I'm from a farmland investment management, money-driven way of working, and Melanie, she is a biodiversity expert for many years already. So there was nature in our home, and there was just hardcore farming in our home, and those two worlds have met each other, and it all started that we wanted to bring taste back on the plates of the children, so that the children would ask their parents, can I have some more potatoes, mommy, because they are so tasteful. And that was the starting point of the whole concept of our farm. That is healthy soil, is healthy plants, is healthy food, is happy people.
Yeah.
And to build that whole concept, it all starts with the soil, and it all starts with biodiversity and biology. And then we discovered on our journey that we have to focus on organic matter, that we have to focus on nutrients, but that we also have to focus on biology and energy of the fields. And that was the starting point. How are we going to improve the quality of soil, that we have healthier plants, and that we can provide the people with healthy food? And that was 10 years ago, the whole journey. And that is the whole concept of Regener8 farming, what we are doing on the farm now. So it's a connection of two worlds into soil.
That must have been a very interesting dinner table.
We had to give some clarifying thoughts about that. My background, I'm an environmental scientist. And I've worked for, you could say, regional and national governments a lot on you could say, on the sweet spots of landscape, biodiversity, and agriculture is a big part of landscape in the Netherlands. So, and having a farm at home, that was for me the ideal, you could say, work level about policy making. How could we make farming more sustainable? But I also felt that in the way which I was working at that time, I was not able to go the whole way, because I was always pulled back again because of a lot of rules and by farmers organizations who thought that I had too much sustainable ideas and I wanted to do, you could say, too drastic rules. So when Jeroen and I had a conversation about that, he saw that his soils were depleted and that he needed to put every year more input in it to get the same output of it. And he saw that his economic revenues went down. Yeah, at that time, I tried to explain to him that that if you want to change that, it needs a systemic change. So when we started with, you could say now, regenerative practices, it was not a whole package of 10 practices at a time. It was just a few practices on a few plots of us. So you could say we have like 360 hectares of big farm. So that's about, I think, 10,000 acres for you. And yeah, we have now the oldest plots which we are farming regenerative. We are farm on that for 10 years now and adding every year more practices on them. And there are also some fields which we still are farming conventional. That's for two reasons, because the first reason is that going through that transition also demands a financial investment, which we can't, you could say we can't do that in 1 year, do the transition of the whole farm. And the other thing is that for a lot of projects, for the proof of practice which you are doing in the foundation, we are comparing conventional plots with regenerative plots. Because we want to show the differences, and we show that via output indicators, like 4 of them. One is nutrition, the second one is water holding capacity, the third one is carbon, of course, and then we have the biodiversity. So on these 4 output indicators, we are doing the monitoring and compare conventional with regenerative. And by showing the improvement in regenerative and showing that those, you could say, those natural capital services are increasing, also hope that we can build business models around that, which you could say the Soil Heroes operation sites uses to encourage businesses to get involved with this and support farmers in the transition phase they are going through when they are starting with Regener8.
Mm. Yeah, it's quite amazing that your journey is so similar to that of ours and the development of carbonate, because when you talk about the things that you are measuring, they exactly align with what we're now measuring in developing a certification for regenerative agriculture. And we measure the soil carbon levels, we measure the nutrient level of the food, we measure the water cycle efficiency, the water holding capacity and the water cycle efficiency, and we measure the biodiversity. So that's quite incredible that you've just laid out our certification plan. And it's amazing. My story started probably 25, nearly 30 years ago now, when I actually had chemical poisoning on the farm. So we started as chemical farmers, and I was just learning about soil health and soil biology at the same time that changing my diet actually repaired my health. And so all of a sudden I realized that this link between how we grow our food on the farm and the food that we eat is this tremendous link in our own health and well-being. Tremendously important. And
farmers,
and so go ahead.
Yeah, farmers can be the pharmacy of the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, that over that 30 years, I've probably we've had the first 10 years making all the mistakes that you could make and discovering what doesn't work, and then the last 20 years doing exactly what you're doing as trying different ways, different methods, so that we can show farmers and we can tell farmers what happens as you repair the soil. And I discovered maybe 10 years, probably 8 years ago, there was a family in Argentina also doing similar things, and they did a podcast or a YouTube and said in the first couple of lines that nothing's truly sustainable until it's also beautiful. And it was an amazing awakening for me, because we said to you earlier that we call our farm heaven on earth, and you know, we sort of sat there a bit tongue-in-cheek, a bit joking. We'd have our cup of tea and we'd look at our farm and we'd say, well, what does heaven look like? And we'd look at the colours here and the tree line there, and it wasn't until I heard this couple saying that nothing's sustainable until it's also beautiful that I realised that sentence is really, really important, because as we create the beauty around us on the farm, we connect to it with our heart, and then we fight for it every day. You know, because that's become such a strong part of us, that as we rebuild that biodiversity and we rebuild the beauty on the farm, we're also rebuilding the nutrition in the food, and we take away that stress of always worrying about, you know, the weather and the chemicals that we're using, and we're returning ourselves to this level of balance and reconnection to the land, which you just can't achieve that in a chemical system. And I think about our children coming onto the farm, and I think about my early days having to get, you know, gloves and face mask and everything. So there was very little fun in that for a child. And if you listen to Joel Salatin, he says that, you know, we have to make this business something that our children want to be involved with. So I just think that regenerative agriculture is such a beautiful journey to bring the joy back into the farming, help to remove the stress, and achieve all of these amazing benefits for the land and the farmers, you know?
Yeah, we are 100% aligned with that statement, and we are also searching for hooks that we can, let's say, the 80% of the society at this moment who is fully disconnected to nature, the way food is produced, where is our food coming from, and because it's heaven on earth, it's beautiful to be there. It's an experience, and we are also in exploring how can we connect very inspiring farmers who are living in heaven on earth, to connect them to the 80% of the society who is fully disconnected to healthy food, who was just walking to fast food, etc., walking to the supermarkets and just pick some food out of the shelves, put a little bit of water to it, and then we have food. No, that's not food, that's artificial food. So the big challenge is how can we scale up this beautiful thing that it will be adopted by the majority, and that they are going to reward what we are doing in the future, because then we have a real future for next generations. And I think it's our task as pioneers, as front runners, to build this bridge to the rest of the world.
Yeah, we've come to learn that 80% of people that are disconnected are actually the key to repairing this planet. Because when they understand the difference in managing the environment, in the health that the regenerative farming is bringing back to the environment, then it's really easy for them to understand that how they spend their food dollars is the most important decision they make around helping the earth and helping repair the planet. We know that we've been working with a group in America called the Real Food Movement. And Dan Kittredge has done a lot of work on nutrition. And, you know, when they looked at carrots, there was a 22,000% difference between the best carrot and the worst carrot, you know. And if you said that that best carrot was 100% on the scale, most of what we buy out of the supermarket sits down between 6 and 16, you know, so less than 1/5 of the nutrition. Now, if you think about that, if we got all of that nutrition up at 100%, we could feed the planet on 1/5 the amount of farming land. And the rest of the land could be put back to biodiversity and forests and nature. Now, obviously, we're not going to get everything back up to 100%, but that tells us the power of supporting regenerative farmers. And if we can get that 80% of people at the supermarket that are disconnected just to understand that one choice that they make when they spend their food dollars, if they support regenerative farmers, how much impact that has to repair the planet.
Super.
I'm very curious. How do you, how in percentages, if we're talking about Australia, how many farmers are in Australia are already, you could say, on track going towards Regener8 or is doing practices on Regener8? Is that above 10 or below 10, or what percentage are we talking about? Because what we experienced is that you could say Australia is one of the big examples where regenerative practices are now more widely spread than here in the Netherlands, for instance. If you look at at Europe, you could say the UK is the country which is the most ahead of Europe. But if you're talking about the mainland, it's less than 1% which heard about the word regenerative farming, and also when they don't know about it, they can't change towards regenerative farming. And I was wondering how it went in Australia, and if you got any advice for us, how we can, you could say, engage more farmers for this way of farming.
I'd say at the moment we are still less than 10%, but in Australia we have a very harsh climate, and we've just had a really severe drought. There's some farmers in Australia still in that drought. We're lucky enough that our farmers, it's started to rain again. I think if there is a benefit to a harsh climate, it is that the farmers have started to look for other ways to farm. So, you know, while things are cruising along okay, then you don't need to look for anything different. But when nature continues to test you all the time, you've got to work out fairly quickly how to work with nature, or you go out of business.
So you have rainfall all the time? Like, is that probably one of the superpowers that you have on your farm and in your area, that you can rely on your rainfall?
Just to say something, our farm is just beneath of Rotterdam, and we are in the middle of the delta. So we got all the European rivers coming along us. So we have, you could say, I think that's one of the advantages of the Netherlands. The availability of sweet water is not a very big issue. Although, and also we are, you could say, we are more fighting against water in the way of that we also, our farm, for instance, we are like 2 or 3 meters below sea level in a poldered area. But what we see now is that parts of the Netherlands are suffering more and more from droughts. So what we now see is also that our summers become hotter, and also drier on a longer period. So not only 3 weeks, but it's not unusual that we have no rain for 8 or 12 weeks. And we have that now for 3 years in a row. So that was, I think, that speeded up also the thoughts about that our way of farming needs to be more climate resilient. And it's that the average year rainfall still stays the same. But what we see is when it rains so heavily in just a few hours, and then we get a whole month of rain just in a few hours. So the rain is getting heavier and more when it's raining. And when it's dry, it's getting hotter and longer periods of dry. So also the Netherlands, although not that hard, I think, not compared to Australia, but we are now in a phase where, for instance, all the surface water is managed here in the Netherlands by water boards. And up to, I would say, 3 years ago, there was just one assignment for them, and it was to get rid of the water as soon as possible because there was no water issue. And since 3 years, the water boards need to change the strategic thinking that they also need to create buffers for the long dry periods. And so governments are now thinking about, okay, how can we make farming more climate resilient? So although we have, compared with you, I think we have a better climate for agriculture. We also experience a lot of climate change here in the Netherlands.
But the beautiful thing is that they can make beautiful wine in the Netherlands now.
Yeah, there's an upside to everything you say.
What they say now, for instance, in the Netherlands, is that we have now the climate of the Dordogne. That's a region in France, a very famous region where they grow grapes and produce wine. So that climate is now slowly, you could say, shifted towards the Netherlands. So we also see that you could say Europe is also heating up, and we know from regions like in Spain and in Portugal, the drought is dreadful there. They also suffer a lot from more dry seasons, a lot of erosion. So that's a big problem there also. So, and I think that's also why now Europe is starting to think about that farming needs to be changed, not only on the economical way, because farmers just, you could say, reach their max on what they can invest, and that the yields can't increase anymore. And they see that the soils can't deliver anymore the high yields they are used to. But on the other way, the politics also realize now that farming also needs to change because of the climate change which is there, and also of the big other social issues like health, which we already touched upon. And the totally disconnection between, you could say, the average population of a country between cities and countrysides, about livelihood in countrysides. It also becomes a very big issue here in the Netherlands.
I was just thinking, because we are so super aligned on the nutrient health issue based on soil improvement. And Dan Kettridge was also on our farm. We know him. We're working with Jill Clapperton at the moment. You are working with it. Are there ideas in Australia that we can, because there is a group in Europe, there is a group in Australia, there's a group in America, in Canada. How can we make a worldwide big statement that we can make impact on a large scale, that it is in the front page of all the newspapers about the possibilities we are working on, that we can have a voice in all the boardrooms of the corporates, for example. Are there ideas in Australia, or because everybody is inventing the wheel on its own at this moment in the region, because the world is big? But I was just wondering, because we are talking about the same things, about the same nutrients, about the same soil improvement, is there also a spot on the horizon possible for a big, I don't know what, but
Yeah.
Well, it's really amazing. We've been speaking to, just in the last sort of 3 or 4 months, we've been interviewing a lot of people and groups and on the global stage. And one of the things that Carbon8 wants to do is actually do an online summit, a global summit, and bring our donors and our groups and our the organisations that are really powering along in this regenerative agriculture space. So I think that initially we were thinking that we just keep it a bit smaller within Australia, but I think the world's ready for it. Actually, I think that we need to get all of our minds together in one space, and being online in that environment is going to have we could have a powerful impact in sharing ideas. And I think what's so wonderful, and you would probably agree, is that when you work in a charity, there's so much more potential of collaboration. Regenerative agriculture and the groups that we work with are already, collaborate so openly and warmly together as it is. But I think that it would be amazing if we could collaborate on something like that together. Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah, because we strongly believe that it must be a bottom-up transition from the farmers, from the soil, and not that the big, let's say, the big food corporates in the world, and there are only 7 less who are going to dominate what we need to do as farmers, that they stay in their power bubble at the moment, because we have to empower the farmers, because that's the future, and not the shareholder-driven, quarterly based big corporates at the moment.
Yeah, I think that getting a closer relationship with our foodies, with our food consumers, is a really important part of that, because they're the ones that make that decision when they spend their money as to whether they're going to support that big corporate farming model, or they're going to support knowing who their farmer is and support that regeneration through the regenerative agriculture. One of the ways that we decided to try and communicate with our foodies was to create a National Regenerative Agriculture Day. And we were a little bit cheeky in that we hijacked Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day in Australia is in the summertime, and so we went, yeah, we'll hijack Valentine's Day because we want everybody to love their farmer. So we have a National Regenerative Agriculture Day every year on the 14th of February. You guys would be welcome to
hijack the day too.
Yeah, you can join us, or you can hijack another day.
No, well, I think the more people that hijack it, the better, because we're always, that's the other thing. And one of the ideas that we've also really looking towards is putting together a documentary film called Vegetable Disclosure. So we're looking at how, getting X-ray into the supermarket, and if you can imagine going into a supermarket and taking everything out of it that is not in the best interests of nature, the environment, that's loaded with preservatives, that has a very high carbon footprint, and what that supermarket would look like when you took all of those
all the degenerative products.
All the degenerative products. So that's some of the ideas that we've got, and we're hoping that we can fundraise that through a funding campaign to really bring strongly. So all of the information that Dan Kittredge has been doing on his bionutrient meter, and the work that we've been doing on soil health, and the positive impacts that we can have, and the incredible benefits there are in nutrient density of eating our food and wellness, and they're all of the things that we want to speak on. So that's another one of our ideas. And I also I didn't realise that you're putting together a guidebook for farmers, which is fantastic. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what you could say. That is was one of the first thing which we discovered is that, as I told you, that Regener8 is not well known here in Europe at all, and it's just beginning. And when we talk to people about Regener8, yeah, the eyes go wide open. Well, what's Regener8? What type of farming is that? So. Yeah, we just wrote down, you could say, from our own experience, the 20 practices we know, which contributes to Regener8. And we fully know that maybe from other parts of the world there will be another maybe practices added, or some are not doable for them at that place. But for now, we also asked 4 other front-runner farms in Europe, one in Austria, one in Germany, one in UK, and one in Belgium. Ask them also to look at the guidelines and just ask them, okay, look at it and see what practices can you adjust on your farm and implement in your farm management. And what we now experience is that the first document, because we are thinking about also creating documents which are going more in depth, because we now experience that farmers now have the document which we have now is a nice document just to have a first idea about, okay, Regener8, what is that? So a lot of people know about organic farming, they know what that's about, but what's about regen farming? So that was you could say, the general purpose of the document. And now also by the feedback of the other farmers in in Europe, we think about writing another document which still stays on the 20 practices, but then go more in depth and look at the more implementing phase for farmers, how they need to do it, and also from all our experience, and see how we can make it a more complete document on that. And one of the things we also want to add then is the results from all the research we do on our farm, and see if we can make a translation from that also in the document. Because
so is that online, Melanie? Is that something that everyone can go to online, or are you working on that at the moment?
The guide, the first guidebook is online. You can download it from our website. And the second document, we are working on it now, and it's mainly that that because we want to implement the research results from it also. We are waiting for that because we are still in the current growing season, and this is also we want to finish 3 research years, you could say, before we want to make we can take conclusions from that. For the research, we work together with the University of Wageningen. That's the agricultural university here in the Netherlands. They do, you could say, the really soil related research, and together with the University of Amsterdam we do the research on biodiversity and especially on natural pest control and pollination. So after this year, you could say we finished the 3 years, and then hopefully those research inputs we can also use for our second document about Regener8 practices. I was wondering what type of research, and do you have already results on research on your farm, and maybe we can make arrangements to exchange those outcomes.
Absolutely, we certainly can. Over the years that we've been working with farmers to improve the soil biology and improve the soil balance and bring things back into a natural balance, I would say that on average, the the improvement on the farm can be anywhere from 30% to 100% improvement in productivity, which is quite extraordinary. You know, it doesn't happen in the first year, but it certainly does happen, and it builds on itself year after year after year. And yeah, we'd be happy to share those results with you. Obviously, our farming's quite a bit different if you're trying to get rid of water and we're trying to find water.
But don't understand me wrong, that in the long dry summers we also need to find water. But I think it's still not that difficult compared with Australia. For us, it's still easy to get to our hands on water. But yeah, and also I think maybe the crops. I don't know which crops you are growing. We are here on a very, you could say, intensive crop plan. So we also grow potatoes and onions. And you could say that yeah, if we're talking about the cereals for us are like a resting crop, but it's all here in our region. It's about a crop rotation, about potatoes and onions, and we also grow now brown beans and also soya beans because we also produce our own soya sauce.
Wow!
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Don't forget to put in the new book a chapter on beauty. I know the Netherlands is already beautiful, but I'm sure that you can still improve.
I think on a worldwide base, if we can set up for us all, for example, in relation to Valentine's Day, a picture challenge of all the beautiful things, because we are looking for how can we make Regener8 farming tangible by the 80%, and that's by showing them the beautiness and the improvement we are making. And so there are so many beautiful things happening at this moment in Regener8 that we need to share that also a little bit, that they can get connected to that. And I think pictures or short movies or what's happening, make it contents to work that out a little bit is something also, because there is a world famous architect, Rem Koolhaas, at this moment, who says all people are going to move to the cities at this moment. I think if this flow is going to continue, 80% of the people are living in cities with millions of people and no nature involved anymore. And those architects are thinking about how can we revitalize the urban area by making the connection again also on architecture between the city and the rural area, because it's not a good sign that everybody wants to go to the city, because that's not good for the health and the environment, etc., etc. So he set up a huge campaign and exhibition in New York about all the beautiful things the urban area is providing, and those pictures are really talking to the 80%. Wow, is this possible?
Yeah, we are lucky enough that in our charity we founded it with a very good friend of ours who is an artist. And if you look on the National Regenerative Agriculture Day website, there we've got a whole resource pack of pictures and memes and posters that are available to be used to help get this message out, you know, through Facebook and through whatever social media channels that we have. And Kelly was not able to join us tonight, but I'm sure if she was here, she would like to tell you about the Regenerative Art Department. And the Regenerative Art Department is all about what you just said. It's about finding those beautiful images and helping people to see what, you know, the absolute abundance and beauty of nature when it's working in balance, you know.
I think I love, Jeroen, I love the idea of leading up to a Valentine's Day, to National Regenerative Agriculture Day, if we could get in touch with all of our farmer groups, your farmers that have signed up to Soil Heroes and Carbon8 and all of our other farmers, to just plan a multi-species crop that's full of flowers, and if we could do a collage of all of the farmers, and that would just be stunning. Like, you know, I think that we have
picture challenge.
a picture challenge. You know,
Yeah.
I think it would be wonderful, because I mean, from our you know, we've probably started the planting multi-species crop. What, this is like our third year or fourth year?
Third year.
Yeah. And, you know, Mike and I we went out on our four-wheeler about 6 weeks ago into our multi-species crop, and it was just so abundant, full of birds, like quails and ladybugs. And, you know, we're going through a terrible mouse plague at the moment. And we've just particularly noticed that because there's so many quails and so many, there's so much biodiversity and bird life, that we're actually we don't have anywhere near as many mice as our farmers, as our neighbours around us.
Yeah.
So it's just
that's maybe also a nice bridge to it. Mike was also telling, okay, don't forget the beauty, and one of, I think, the key things we want to integrate in our, you could say, Regener8 is also work with increased biodiversity, and we do that, as you see here, with our field margins. So what we really want to implement is that 4% of every plot, you could say, is used for biodiversity, and that can be like field margins, can be with biodiversity lanes, because also from the research which we have done together with the University of Amsterdam, which is really specialized, focusing on natural pest control, we see, as Helen also just told us, is that if you are able to you could say create a habitat for your natural competitors for plagues in your crops, then you don't need to use any chemicals on that yet. So for instance, in the research we did with the University of Amsterdam, we now have 3 years in a row, we have proved that we don't need to spray for aphids anymore, because we have enough natural enemies for to control the plagues in our crops. So that is also I think a big issues which we need to communicate. It's not only about beauty, because I totally agree with you, Mike. If people coming to our farm, they see the field margins, as you see in the back of us, for them that's the real proof of Regener8. Then they really see it visual, that we do farming on a different way. And because when there is cereals growing on your plot, you can't see at that time if it was till or no till, or did we use cover crops or not. But if you have your field margins or your biodiversity lanes integrated in your plots, then it's really visual that you are farming on a different way. And also we do monitoring on, for instance, on butterflies. We are participating on a big national program for that. We do the monitoring also on birds on our farms, because what we want to show them, that there is a very important correlation between, you could say, the functional part of having those biodiversity elements integrated in your farm, because it increased natural resilience, I could say, and also the benefit which you will have for nature. So it's like a multicultural functionality of a lot of things. And for instance, we have a lot of ditches here and in our countryside, and if you plan the field margins alongside the ditches. So it's like a buffer zone between the crops and the ditches. You also, you could say you add another function to it, and you will prevent that if fertilizer is sprayed on the field, it won't get into the water, and the water can't get contaminated with any of those chemicals. So it's about really thinking about multifunctional implementing of natural elements, and we really try to push that. And for ourselves, we told each other that we want to, you could say, plan at least 4% of every plot for biodiversity, as you see at the back of us.
Melanie, may I ask you, how have you got a measurement process? Like, I know that measuring biodiversity is sometimes quite difficult.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear how, and because we have farmers that watch our podcast, it'd be really interesting to hear ways that you've managed to make it a little easier in that process.
Yeah, well, I must say we do that together with, as I told you, the University of Amsterdam. So they do mainly all the work. So what we do is that we monitor the amounts of natural enemies in our field margins, and that's just walking on the 50 every time on the same 50 meters. And you need to walk that over in 20 minutes. So it's a very strict protocol. And then you just watch every enemy you see, you need to register it. And then the university also registers the amount of aphids in the crops. And we do that mainly in potato crops, because in potato crops, the amount of aphids are the highest risk of farmers, because this is the highest yield is the potato. So spraying insecticides is very cheap for them compared to the risk they need to they want to prevent. So for them it's very easy to use the insecticides, and by doing that monitoring, we do that now. There are 80 farmers who are participating in that project here in this area. And what we do is, when we do that monitoring during the growing season, they get immediately an email from the University of Amsterdam saying, okay, we have now counted your natural enemies, we have counted your aphids, and what we see is that there isn't a disbalance, so you don't need to spray. And just by that email, a farmer is secured that that is all right, that he does not need to go for the insecticide. So we acknowledge that it's very important that that monitoring is done for the farmer, and the next step would be does the farmer has enough time and knowledge also to do it himself? But what we now see is that a lot of farmers lack of the time and also the knowledge to do it. And because of the big project we are running, we are able to facilitate the farmers with this. But the next step is that we need to make sure that the farmer goes into his plots and do the monitoring himself. For now, for us here within the 80 farms which are taking part of this project, it's all facilitated by the University of Amsterdam.
Wonderful. And Jeroen, I'm fascinated. You mentioned about the ecosystem services and trying to pay farmers for that. How do you, with the biodiversity work that you're doing and measuring and managing and paying farmers, is that something that's happening now, or is that something that you're actually working on? Because this is very similar to our timeframes here in Australia.
It's already happening. We have quite some companies at this moment who are happy to support farmers with soil improvement, where carbon sequestration is the big thing, but we combine it always with biodiversity improvement. And so we are talking about an enhanced carbon or carbon plus way as the first ecosystem services to support the farmers with. And there is quite a growing appetite. There is an initiative from 51 big companies in finance who wants to improve biodiversity at the moment. By just sponsoring biodiversity square meters to the farmers have a business model to improve the amount of biodiversity on their farms. And so then the cost price is paid, and then the farmers have the benefit for natural pest control on their farms. So we just use a price per square meter, and we implement it in the price for carbon.
And you could say by doing the research with the University of Amsterdam, we want to prove that maybe a farmer needs to trust more that the biodiversity is there. So of course it will be a next step for him to go into the fields and look at his own aphids population and his natural enemy population. But we try to continue this research for maybe for 4 more years. So we have about 7 years of proof, and if we can prove that in those 7 years, every year we could control the pest with natural enemies, then I think also a farmer is more, you could say, feels secure that only the existence of the biodiversity lane implemented in his plot is already enough, so he does not need to worry about insecticides anymore. So I think that's the stage I really want to go to, that they get their confidence back again in that if you restore natural balance, you don't need the interventions with chemicals anymore.
Do any of the farmers use a refractometer to check the plant sugars and the plant balance?
Not yet. We have one on the farm, but we hadn't had the time to measure the sugar levels so far.
We did some work with potatoes, in Australia, and within just one cropping cycle, we were able to bring the quality up on the potatoes from 50% A-grade potatoes to 70% A-grade potatoes. Now, we use a refractometer to talk to the plant, but it can be a little frustrating until you learn what the plant's saying back to you. And I think it's a combination of working on all the different things at the same time, and the ecosystem gets better and better. So if insects are only in nature to tell us if we are out of balance, then we can work on the soil balance, and we can work on the plant balance, and we can work on the biodiversity balance, and we work on all of those things together, then we get some tremendous change on the farm. And we have the beauty of the habitat strips, the flowers, and we also have the beauty of the bank balance, because the bank balance improves as well.
Yeah, super. I'm totally aligned with it, with the holistic approach of all. It's not one thing; it's all the things together, and we need to empower the farmers with knowledge and trust around it, because all the suppliers who are entering the farms at the moment, they are only busy with spreading anxiety among the farmers, and that's their business model, that they can sell a lot of chemicals. So we need to prove the opposite and give them faith and trust to rely on nature.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add about the research which Mike was just telling us about, is that we are now preparing a new project together with Jill Clapperton from the USA, and that also will, you could say, will be focusing on especially the nutrition level, and show the correlation about when your soil is more imbalanced, your nutrition level in your plants and in your products will increase. So we are looking now, preparing a project for 3 years, and hopefully I will have the funding for that research finalized within 1 or 2 months. And then hopefully next season, we hope we can start together with Jill on that. So yeah, you could say that's another project for us to to support the, how do you say, the knowledge, but also the how do you say, oh, now I forget my English words. The trust that if they do Regener8 practices, then the soil balance will improve, and by doing that, the nutrition will improve. So by just doing that in proof of practices for several years in a row, we want to provide them with, you could say, such secureness that they don't have to worry about it anymore, but that they take it for granted that it is that way, and that's enough for them to start start with Regener8 practices on their farm.
That's wonderful. It's interesting because I think
you guys are great. You're awesome. Great stuff.
It's just such serendipity, isn't it? That, you know, here we are on our journeys on different parts of the world, and it's like the 100 monkeys of everyone seeming to be doing the same things at the same time. And I'm also fascinated. We mentioned earlier on in the conversation about that you had spoken with Charles Massey, and Charles Massey is very dear to all of our hearts in Australia. And his book, one of the things at Carbonate initially when we first launched our charity was to put together what's called a smart box. And it was a way of getting information, in particularly books, because one of the things that we always find is sometimes a really good book can change a farmer's whole idea about, you know, why they need to change. And Charles Massey's book was one of them. It's been one of those beautiful books that has really transformed information getting into the farmers sort of in farmers' hands. So share with us your conversation with Charles Massey and what you're doing together.
Yeah, we were invited 2 years ago by the clothing company Patagonia.
Yeah.
To tell a little bit more about what is really happening on the ground in the Regener8 world, because they strongly believe in restoring the world, restoring soil by promoting regenerative agricultural practices and by implementing that also in their supply chain. So the two of us were invited to talk for the audience of Patagonia around this issue, and then we met, and Charles and his wife and his daughter were a little bit earlier in the Netherlands, and we invited them to our farm. And for example, it was a super exciting thing to see that we are living below sea level. So we were standing on a dike with a family, and on the one side you could see the high water level, and on the other side of the dike
sea, yeah,
you could see the low farmland level. And it was it was hard to match in their head that we were farming below sea level, for example. So we had a super good connection about how nature meets modern farming and the things we were doing on our farm. And he was a little bit surprised that we don't have animals, but we are simulating the power of animals by making biofertilizers, for example. He was on our farm. Then we did the presentations for Patagonia, and after 2 days we went together to Groundswell, which is the big Regener8 event in Europe at the moment, and he was on stage there together with Alan Savory, and so he did a beautiful talk about Regener8 and the promotion for our farm. So it was a big boost to the work we are doing. So real, from an ambassador point of view, we were super thankful to that. And 2 years later, there's another groundswell event last week. We were not able to go there through all the COVID-19 precautions. So we were thinking about, is it possible to make a statement together with Charles Messi, what has happened after 2 years in the Regener8 world, and what is our call to action from Australia and Europe to the audience on the groundswell event in the UK. And so we made a small video together where we interviewed Charles Messi again after 2 years. What was his experience on his farm, the improvement, he had a little bit more water, etc. But making steps forward also. And yeah, that was received quite well in the UK, that we were not able to visit the event, but that we were through video.
A video message.
Video message.
Yeah, we made a video message. So it is a video message of 4 or 5 minutes. So if you want, we can send it to you, and you can see how it is. It's just like a podcast. Yeah. We had a Zoom call with him, and that was recorded together with some visual images of our farm. So if you would like it, we can send you the video we made.
We're going to put it at the end of this. We'll put it at the end of this our podcast. It'll be perfect. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, you two, what a wonderful deep conversation we've had. It's just been such a delight to interview you, and I hope that we can actually keep in touch with each other definitely and share our journey. And I think that we've got so many incredible opportunities to work together, particularly on so many.
I just think we need to organise a farm exchange sometime.
I think we should definitely. Yes, we'd love that. So
Melanie has been to Australia already, and she says always, "Oh, let's go to Australia. Let's go to Australia."
Well, you can
after my how do you say? After I finished university, I went traveling through Australia for 6 months, and always telling my husband he needs to go also. But maybe sometime. But for now, we don't have the time.
Yeah, whenever it's safe to travel, you jump on a plane and come and hang out with us. We'd love that. And we've also got to get and see your farm, because I've never been to Europe. I've managed the UK, but never set foot on the continent. So I'd love to come and see you as well.
So tell, if you could let our audience.
You're more than welcome.
How did they get in touch with you? Let us know about your website. What's your web address?
Soul Heroes. Yeah, we have the soulheroes.com, and we have the soulheroesfoundation.com.
That's great. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's been such a delight to be with you, and we'll share this with you, and we'll keep in touch. So thank you so much. And thanks
for having us.
Another Regener8 podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good morning, Jeroen, and good evening, I think, Charlie.
It is evening, and good evening to both of you. Good morning to both of you there.
I think we should congratulate Paul and the Terry brothers and Alex, the whole family, on their tremendous efforts every year to pull the groundswell gathering together. It's been 2 years since you were standing alongside each other at groundswell, literally on the grass. Quite a lot has happened since. Jeroen, you can share a little bit with what's happening with Soul Heroes.
Thanks, Gina. A lot of things have changed in a positive way. We are making progress. I remember very clearly the moment that we all went to Groundswell. To be in a place with experts and gurus around Regener8 in one place in the UK was super exciting and super motivating for us. And from that moment on, we continued developing the business models for regenerative agriculture. So it's not only the product itself with a higher nutrient density, but also how can we measure and quantify the other ecosystem services which are involved with regenerative agriculture. We have been quite busy with making the real product tangible and easy to understand. And the moment is now, exactly after 2 years, that there is a new groundswell that we are speaking to Charlie again. We are ready to enter into the market with business models around soil improvement based on regenerative agricultural practices.
Well, when I was in Europe 2 years ago and I was doing some work with Patagonia, it's a wonderful company now supporting regenerative agriculture. They put me on to Jeroen and Melanie, and we drove out for the day, and I was absolutely blown away at innovation of planting the entire farm on its surroundings with biodiverse flowers, etc., that supported pest controlling insects and birds. And then to see the innovation that Jeroen has initiated in planting commercial crops, but without any of the industrial inputs, just his own innovation of the way he tills and the way he makes his own fertilizer and biological inputs. It was wonderfully exciting. And then from there we went to groundswell. So it was a wonderful few days.
So what was so different or special, or what was it in particular that struck you about what Jeroen and Melanie are doing?
Well, we drove out for a couple of hours from Amsterdam through the polder country, and here's a farm in the midst of industrial farming.
We now know from the work from Drawdown and many more scientists now working on it that regenerative agriculture has some of the best solutions to addressing the 6 or 7 planetary systems that have been disturbed by modern humanity.
The real word Regener8 was still well known in a small community, but in 2 years' time it is become a real accepted word. Regener8 is the future, and also in Europe there is a great movement of frontrunner farmers and the first followers who wants to step into the Regener8 practices, but there is still a lot of things which needs to be developed. Our main focus was always within Soil Heroes, how can farmers earn money with Regener8 practices. We've been busy the last 2 years building a platform, a system to monitor and monetize the amount of ecosystem services which are involved on soil improvement. So we're really focusing on soil improvement and the combination with biodiversity, carbon sequestration, water holding capacity and nutrients, which we think are the 4 biggest topics which are involved soil improvement and changing your conventional way of farming to a regenerative way of farming.
What's holding everyone back from farming the way that you do?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious without getting into it. It's all about power. The big power is behind the multinationals that push all the industrial products. So government policy locked into a paradigm that post-Second World War to where we are. But we now know that the fruits of that industrial agriculture are now having some horrific effect on the planetary systems, whether it's climate, water, biodiversity, nitrogen, phosphorus, interlinked cycle, land clearing, etc. And so that's where the skepticism from is a new paradigm, and it's hard to take on board when you've devoted your career to another path. It's changing, and it has to change. That's going to crack open more minds. And then the other big thing, when you look at the wonderful food coming off farms like Jeroen and Melanie, it's just a healthy, nutrient-rich food density nature of that food. We now know that the exponential rise in modern diseases relates very much to nutrient-empty foods off industrial landscapes, many herbicides and other chemicals disturbing our bodies, and hence the modern disease exponential rises.
How would you see the role of the rest of the world in that interaction with the farmer?
In the end, it's all about nutrients. So if we are able to make the connection between the consumers and the farmers, that the consumers and the companies or the corporates are going to promote and reward regenerative agricultural practices, starting with carbon sequestration and biodiversity, in the end, we can provide society with good and healthy food. And we are ready to start monitoring what's happening in the soil and in the products the farmers are selling according the development of the nutrient density. And If we are able to do that, we can build a land passport together with a food passport. And there you can see the development of the nutrient density in our food. And then we are selling health, and then we are the pharmacy of the future. And then the whole thing has changed from being the problem owner to being part of the solution. I think we can make together a super call to action. If everybody believes that health is the happiness of our future, let's start building connections between companies and farmers to set up regenerative agricultural businesses, that we gather the data for the farmers, that they can show that they are really doing good things. And then we have a bottom-up system where we can help society. So I think in the 2 years' time, things have developed in the positive way, that we are able to measure the good things in soil and in our products. The big thing is, let's start connecting to each other and show the world on a large scale that we can do it.
I think Karen said it beautifully. I call this whole process an underground revolution, as in a bottom-up driven thing, and playing on the analogy of healthy soil. It's the soil biology that is delivering many of the nutrients into our healthy foods.
Essentially, an underground movement for a democratic pharmacy for the earth that takes all of us. It's not just on farmers, it's not just on companies, it's not just on consumers. It requires us literally kind of field to fork, so to say, farm to shelf, for us all to play our role in that.